Part 1. Night in the Woods is a game. 2017's Night in the Woods is one of the modern classics. It's a game that aspires to the firmament of literature or evocative cinema, but regardless, Night in the Woods is a game. You play it, and that's part of what I love about it. To be a video game is to create a medium of interaction by which a player controls their experience. In the simplest terms, video games are a succession of verbs. The singular verb of 1972's Pong is block. 1981's Pac-Man upgraded this to include two verbs, eat and avoid. 1993's Misc went wild and had its primary verbs be examine and consider. Already, layers of abstraction have been added on, moving the experience out of the digital space and into the cognitive space. Doom, as Action Button would say it, has two very wide cast net verbs, seek and destroy. 1996's Super Mario 64 has the standard run, jump, and fight triple threat combo that's hard to topple in terms of expanse and elegance, but includes slightly more obtuse verbs like improvise and plan. At higher levels of play, and RPGs expand their vocabulary of verbs to the point that they may as well begin writing their own dictionaries: purchase, explore, battle, prepare, converse, navigate, etc. As we can see from this, throughout time, games have expanded their list of actions. Fabled designer Peter Molyneux built the lofty aspirations for that series around the idea of almost infinite in-game choice, an exponential increase of available verbs, in other words. The modern AAA video game tends to not hone its focus in, but grow it outward, to make each game a buffet of different options, systems, and interactions. Indie games like Night in the Woods tend to scale back, as both a realistic limitation of budget and an aesthetic choice to place them in quiet opposition to modern maximalist game design. But really, verbs are strictly the mechanisms by which a player interacts with the game, and their coldness can sometimes belie the experience as a whole. To illustrate, an art museum can be a wonderful place, intellectually exciting and emotionally investing at their very best, and the primary verb of an art museum is just look. Night in the Woods is more interactive than an art museum, but not by as much as you might expect. Most of the time, your primary verbs are walk and talk. Punctuations to these verbs occur. Smash happens sometimes. Jump is a fun one, but not strictly necessary too often. Touch is a unique one that every once in a while places you directly in control of protagonist Mae Borowski's hand, and most excitingly, for my rhythm game loving heart, rock is another verb that takes over when Mae grabs her bass guitar. The day that I nail the bass solo on Pumpkinhead Guy is the day you'll see the actual wiring of my brain change irreparably. Is this better than Guitaru Man? No. The point is, were I to bend the fabric of time and space and meet this game as a 17-year-old version of myself, there is a chance that I might dismiss it as barely a game at all. How could it be? The verbs are simply inadequate to create a compelling gameplay experience, and also there is no difficulty whatsoever. Sure, some of the rhythm game sections can be tough, but it doesn't even matter if you fail them. The nested game within a game Demon Tower that can be played on Mae's laptop can be difficult, but it's completely off to the side of any main objective, so what's even the point? No boss fights, no enemies, no experience, minimal platforming, just walking and talking. Boring. Right? That's all true in a certain manner of thinking, but I consider that manner of thinking to be very fallacious. I look at Night in the Woods now, and I see something that cannot exist outside the gaming medium and be as compelling as I find it to be. Within its medium of interaction that fully ensconces the player within the tattered boots and scrambled mind of Mae Borowski and the town of Possum Springs as a setting, it is irrevocably and undeniably a game. If I imagine Night in the Woods as another form of art, say a movie or a Netflix miniseries or something like that, I'm immediately met with something that jams that imagining. In the opening sequence of this game, May treks through the woods in between her house and the bus station, and as easily as I could see this scene translated into the medium of television, so much character and quirkiness would be lost in translation. May looking at plastic bags on trees and describing them as ghosts of the forest, wondering how a shopping cart ended up from one part of town to the exact opposite end in the woods, and ruminating on how little height she's gained between being a child and the current moment. In short, Night in the Woods fleshes out its personality and character through large amounts of strictly extraneous text. There is simply no visual medium of fiction, save for some particularly unmotivated independent films where this much text is given simply to junk info. And when I say junk info, understand I don't mean that as an insult. To the contrary, I plumb Night in the Woods for its writing, sardonic, witty, meme-learned, brimming with worldly texture, and occasionally deeply moving. Night in the Woods' setting of Possum Springs is more perfectly realized in the first walk May takes through the town from her house to the convenience store of Snack Falcon than most games can muster in their entire duration. By simply conversing with every NPC and interacting with every element along this short walk, you can glimpse shadows of economic stagnation, regional history, labor difficulties, the character of the town and its inhabitants, and May's somewhat obscured personal backstory. All this while you bask in the beautiful, autumn-colored aesthetic of the game and listen to the magnificent, gorgeous, and slightly haunting track Back to the Holler, a song that captures both the sadness and comfort of being home. If a game's opening 30 minutes should act as a tutorial on how to interface with it, Night in the Woods teaches us to slow down, look out, and listen up. There is so much packed into this wonderful opening walk sequence that would make for a profoundly uneventful episode of television or a downright terrible 20 minutes of movie watching. The internal time economy of movies, television, video games, and books are just simply different. They just work differently. And it is upon considering this that I am left with no other choice but to think of this as outright brilliant game design and scripting that turns this all so compelling. The game impels you to take your time to really savor each moment of the game, and I find this really easy to do because its presentation is so downright lovely all throughout. I mean, you're seeing it, right? The color, the design, the pitch perfect aesthetic, the silhouette rule following character designs, it's all just so visually pleasing. The music is another highlight and is paired perfectly with the autumnal mountain town, draggy, reverberated with learnings from dream pop, ambient, psych rock, and even a little bit of pop punk. The music often hovers in this somewhat mysterious middle between major and minor keys, pleasant and abrasive tonalities, incorporating a lot of non-traditional harmonies that betray a sense of wrongness. Just look at the track Dinner at Bees, which is lovely and peaceful, but interrupted by some disquieting synthesized cello. You can feel both the comfort of home and the sense that something is wrong in that home. Astral Coal Town is appropriately spaced out sounding, but also threatening and almost martial, reminding me somewhat of the work of Grant Kirkhope in its fusion of playful and menacing. Fireflies on the Porch is as stirring and lovely as the title suggests. Video Outpost 2 is bouncy, fun, and also somewhat dreamy sounding. And the pop songs that you play with the band, Die Anywhere Else, Weird Autumn, and Pumpkinhead Guy, are bangers. All of them bangers, especially Die Anywhere Else, which modern baseball wish they had written. Of course, as we all know, music is just vibrations. It belongs to the world of vibes, to the soft, willowy, artistic bed of subjectivity. Let's not dwell anymore on subjectivity. Let's go into the world of scientific objectivity. Let's talk about design. Because even though art is subjective, it is made up of the objective and scientifically observable building blocks of design. That's what those words mean. Absolutely. That is what those words mean. I am speaking an outsized vocabulary of words in a male pattern speaking voice, so therefore it must be true. Okay, enough jokes. Let's talk about narrative choice, because narrative choice is another central pillar of Night in the Woods' game design philosophy. You are not handed the keys to the narrative car and given total and complete freedom to control every aspect of the story. Remember those realistic financial constraints I mentioned earlier, but you can control who and what you choose to see. The primary manifestation of this player choice is expressed in the decision to spend your time either with Greg or B. This is a subtle but pretty great example of game to real life verisimilitude that Night in the Woods likes to play around with a lot. Because, depending on the player's choice to spend time with either Greg or B, the game's tone will be altered respectively. It works the same way in real life. If you choose to go to the same location with two people of vastly different personalities, you are going to end up with vastly different impressions of that location based on the person you're with. To select Greg is to engage in petty crime, hijinks, and tomfoolery with a touch of gravitas at times. Greg has more mini-games in his route than B does, and this matches the energy of Greg as a character, high-spirited, fun-loving, troublemaking, and a bit immature. His route emphasizes Night in the Woods' comedic, mimetic, and quirky qualities, and to be honest, I never go through a run of this game without at least doing one Greg hangout. I just need the palate cleanser. And the reason why I would need such a palate cleanser is because of the other choice, which is B. And selecting B is what I did, at least initially. Call me a masochist, empathetic, or just plain emo, but just don't call me over for dinner at B's house, because that was a very uncomfortable scene. Fool I was. I figured Greg has Angus. B doesn't really have anyone. My heart wept for B Santello. My head screamed at my choice to keep hanging out with her, because while I had narrative choice to a degree, I could not prevent May from continuing to fuck up their relationship and upset her further. Jeez. And isn't that a beautiful, painful piece of social realism? As a person, sometimes you want to be close with somebody, you want to love somebody, but Your presence just seems to cause pain and strife, and what do you do in that situation? That's a rhetorical question. I don't really have an answer. In all, B's story was pretty tough to stomach at times, but good art isn't always a cup of hot chocolate. Sometimes you're handed a bitter cup of black coffee like B, and you drink it because, god damn it, the flavor profile is really good and complex and multifaceted, and sometimes, just sometimes, a black coffee is better than any cream or sweetener you could put in it. That's B. Her storyline made me cry. Her scene in the graveyard was like being kicked in the balls. She's the character I felt both most connected to and least alike. Someday, I'll figure that one out. Today is not that day. I'm a writer. I'm a critic. I'm not a therapist, least of all to myself. B's route emphasizes Night in the Woods as a piece of social and sometimes even political realism, as something stark, something slightly cold, something that is nonetheless emotionally affecting, and in the 11th hour it will wrap you up in a blanket and hold you to its chest, and it will say that it's alright. I don't want to seem biased. Greg and B are both great characters. I treasure them both as much as I can treasure any fictionalized anthropomorphic animal. Their respective inclusions are both important in the same way that the yin-yang symbol remains one of the most profound and thought-provoking symbols in all of human creation. And if that reads as corny to you, then butter me up. Despite that, yes, B is my favorite character in this game. One of my favorite characters in fiction. I like her more than Greg. I like her more than Angus. I like her even more than May. I like her even more than Sir Casey not appearing in this game, Hartley. But the game presents enough player choice, enough personally tailored specificity, enough you give what you get type of thing that feels like a meaningful choice in some way. And to return to my thesis, that right there is game. If I have not made my point, I have failed. If it's not clear already, Night in the Woods is a game. The experience of it is molded to your choices. It contains a reasonably rich pool of secrets, bonuses, and side content, at least attempting to be in keeping with modern game standards, and it emphasizes the player's diligent engagement. It is also obvious that Night in the Woods is a game that is light on game and heavy on everything else. It's an affecting document of our age. Yes, I'm being serious. Both highly personal and sharply political. Please stick with me. A slice of reality served on a platter of cute little animals. We live in a society that has had 5 seasons of BoJack Horseman that has gone on to become one of the most critically acclaimed television shows of all time. You are not allowed to laugh scornfully at what I'm saying anymore. In a way, the developers stacked the deck in their favor because in many ways, Possum Springs is real. Okay, well, it obviously isn't, but fans and even creators seem to consider the world of the game and our own world to be almost perfect copies of each other, down to the timeline of its history and its location in real-world space, which is probably somewhere in central Pennsylvania. By simply taking an almost journalistic approach, by documenting real-world ails in prose-like fictional realism, the game earns its resonance almost by default. I see Possum Springs, and I see America. I see its residents, and I see echoes of the citizens of America, for better and for worse. It's honest, and it does a lot with that honesty. Night in the Woods is a game. Night in the Woods is Americana for the modern age. Part 2. Night in the Woods is a pizza and a song. Americana is fascinating to me. Americana is a memory of a time that never was, a snapshot of an ideation belonging to a slim period of American optimism, the post-war bravado of having quashed fascism, the steely-eyed machismo and utter freedom of the cowboy, the orderly and propriety of a stable nuclear family unit, the honesty and dignity of turn-of-the-century mine labor, the aesthetics and glamorous excess of pre-depression New York City, the singular genius and garage-born gumption of these software titans that would come to dominate the world. This is America, land of the free, home of the brave, land of the move fast, home of the break things. Grant Wood's painting American Gothic is so noteworthy that I'd be arrogant to even attempt to venture a novel interpretation. The painting is steeped in a quiet, bubbling sense of long-dead controversy. Is the painting satiric, prodding at the simplistic hillbillies of the rural American states with a pitchfork, or celebratory of their honest virtues and austere, pious existence? Maybe this question doesn't matter right now. American Gothic as a phrase is larger in my headspace than any works by Grant Wood could ever be. The aesthetic of American Gothic, portrayals of the splintered edges and dark corners of the existing cultural body of Americana, is something I cannot escape. I know it as I know myself. Decay, war, imperialism, racism, our own foundational relationship to the eugenics movement, the genocide, internment, and erasure of indigenous groups, the household abuse that was given cover by appeals to patriarchy and social normativity, black lung and death through silica inhalation, a country racked by unchecked capitalism and driven into 30% unemployment, the trial where Bill Gates stood in arrogant disinterest before the world as he flippantly dismissed legal claims of Microsoft's monopolistic tendencies. This is America. Just the worst. 2017's Night in the Woods is a video game, and it is also a piece of Gothic Americana. I understood this within minutes of booting the game up for the first time. As soon as I saw the disquieting mix of comfort and desolation that characterized the game's setting of Possum Springs, it was clear. This clarity was only brought into further relief by the slow drip introduction of themes of generational trauma, economic disenfranchisement, and the deterioration and shrinking of the Rust Belt. The Rust Belt is a loose cultural and economic zone corresponding roughly to the Appalachian and Midwestern regions of the United States. It's an interesting name for a place because it refers specifically to its failure. In the past, the Rust Belt was known as a cradle of industry. One of its crown jewels, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, is still known as the Steel City in reference to this past. The echoes of that past can even be seen in the name of their respective football team. It is the Rust Belt, not because its current state of industry, but in reference to the deterioration of that industry over time, allowing their machines and factories to go oxidized from neglect. For the Rust Belt, decay is an inalienable part of its identity. Night in the Woods centers this decay. It centers regression. It centers harkening backwards to prevent confronting the hell of the present. Our protagonist, Mae Borowski, begins the game having just dropped out of college and returning home to Possum Springs. Mae's reasons for returning are not made clear until the end, and even when it's given explanation, it's still a muddy recollection of a clear dissociative episode. Night in the Woods does not smack you with its sadness. Its most overtly sad moment, by my measure, is when side character B visits the grave of her mother. However, the moment is played so coolly and B so outwardly unaffected that it's easy to let it slide off of you. Scratch any surface of this game, however, and you'll find tragedy. Selmers is a silly tertiary character who lives right down the street from your house, who you pass by every day. You can likewise ask her every day to read you her pithy, almost meaningless poems on your way to downtown Possum Springs. Example, my heart is a dankness, but when I see you, I feel a thankness. But, should you happen to catch Selmers at the library on poetry night, they'll smack you with the devastating "There is no reception in Possum Springs," a verse catalog of very real grievances about the injustice of living destitute in a world run by tech billionaires. Let's read it. because I think it's neat. There's no reception in Possum Springs, no reception here. I wave my black phone in the air like a flare, like a prayer, but no reception. I read on the internet, babyface boy billionaire phone app sold made more money in one day than my family over 100 generations, more than my whole world ever has. World where house buying jobs become rent paying jobs, become living with family jobs. Boy billionaires, money is access to politicians waiting for us to die. Lead in our water, alcohol and painkillers. Replace my job with an app, replace my dreams of a house and a yard with a couch in the basement. The future is yours. Force 24/7 entrepreneurs. I just want a paycheck in my own life. I'm on a couch in the basement, there in the house and the yard. Some night I will catch a bus out to the west coast and burn their Silicon City to the ground. May characterizes this serious episode in an otherwise silly character's arc by adding to their page on Selmers, which previously read, quote, Selmers the poet, with the new addendum, quote, Selmers the good poet. It may be worth noting that Selmers is a recovering opioid addict. The opioid epidemic has been a topic of American discourse that has come in and out like a tide for the past couple of decades. Despite the wavering media notoriety of it, the numbers of deaths involving opioids has only gone up almost unwaveringly since the start of the 21st century. It's a testament to America's sterling healthcare that a majority of opioid addicts began their habit through legal health channels. Note, friends don't let friends be fooled by Republicans pretending to care about the opioid epidemic. They simply do not. Sorry for getting overtly political there in this otherwise apolitical review of an entirely apolitical piece of video game media. That must just be my hysteria. I think what we can learn from this episode with Selmers is that every character in Possum Springs is quietly or even loudly tragic, in large part because Possum Springs, as much a realistic representation of America as a game has ever ventured, is a tragic setting, and each character in this game is given no choice but to cook slowly in its rusted pot. Grant Wood's American Gothic spun controversy because of its ambiguity. It was hard to tell by just looking at it the cultural assumptions, prejudices, and philosophical positions the artist held. The central question of the piece to art historians is whether or not American Gothic is endeared to or mocking its subjects. A Night in the Woods is one of the funniest games I've ever played, up there with Psychonauts, Lisa, and I don't know, Super Paper Mario. I only have to look at Greg waving his arms around to immediately be tickled. The flat, cynical affectations of most of our characters might seem a bit forced, but as a younger millennial who has talked in this exact fashion around my friends, perhaps I shouldn't be the one to throw stones about this topic. The dialogue in this game is drawn loosely, but it whips tautly nonetheless. The game runs a deft balance between its dual aspects of juvenile hijinks and serious social commentary. Such is the life of anyone growing up into a burgeoning dystopia, which is nevertheless cradled in the lap of first world luxury. Many of us have the privilege to be slackers, but a full understanding that that privilege is shaky at best. Greg is our impulse to shirk responsibility wherever we may find it. B illuminates a quiet understanding that so many people do not have a choice to take on responsibility when it confronts them. Maybe you are B, quietly impugning the Mays and Gregs of this world with the underlying feeling that you desperately wish you could have a sliver of what they have. B wants what May has access to. B wants a house, a childhood home with both of her parents. She wants to while away her years at college, partying and having fun. B wants, in a sense, to be a kid again, because a lot of us want to be a kid again. The death of her mother is just a reminder that that is not an option anymore. Like American Gothic, Night in the Woods is ambiguous about the character of its small town citizens, though it seems to settle on the idea that these are people molded by the material conditions of the small cross-section of the world they know and occupy. A very socialist-y conclusion, if you ask me. The parallel between Mae Borowski returning to her hometown for some semblance of security and sense amongst a confusing and disorienting world, and the cult whose commitment to the stability of the past leads them into villainy, feels deliberate. You could almost see Mae being led into the dark temptations of blind nostalgia should she decide to forsake the current moment as it is. It's why the premise of boyfriends Angus and Greg moving to a different city to try to make a new life is so injurious to her. It's how the ending, anticlimactic as it is, makes perfect sense. Mae, Greg, Bea, and Angus meet together for a pizza and a song, perhaps in a self-aware escape of the surreal and horrifying circumstances that befell them for the second half of the game, but also in celebration of this very moment that they deem worth living for. Possum Springs is both the backwards cult anchored to the town's past, but also the young people who make up the clay of its future, whether that future is in continuing to exist or not. Historically, mining has been one of the bedrocks of the Appalachian economy. The region's relationship to mining seems to change with its material conditions. The historical fact of the matter is that mining is, was, and will probably forever be nasty work taken on by people for whom a cushiony office job with health insurance options and a 401k was never an option. These people were broke, and hence were looked down on by those who had wealth. This very quality is why the current people of Appalachia will often look at their mining history with pride, rather than see the dirty, downtrodden workers of the time as the other. They see it as a sort of reflection of their own current state. Possum Springs is a town that used to have a mine. Like so many places with a mine, the town lived and died based on the health of their mining industry. In a thematically apropos touch, the aforementioned villainous cult does all their clandestine activities in the abandoned remnant of what used to be a bustling mine. This is also their eventual undoing. Despite being an obvious fiction given to exaggeration and populated exclusively with anthropomorphic animal characters, Night in the Woods shows a lot of interest in having its world mirror our world. Its world is subject to most of the same rules of politics and economy that our world is. The realism is so palpable, in fact, that Bea Santello is a member of an unseen socialist-leaning chatterbox, which is an in-game analog to Discord that never seems to accomplish anything. You see, that's the kind of realness that you only get through lived experience. Much hand-wringing across the political spectrum has been made of the transition of America into an almost purely service-based economy. What this means is that in the somewhat fallacious linear progression of economies from primitive agriculture to early modern industry to contemporary service, America is, quote, furthest along in this economic development. Naturally, the academic Marxist angle would speak to the alienation of labor this would facilitate, the detachment from the meaningful purpose of any given person's labor when the product in question is not an ore or a foodstuff, but an intangible service. I would sooner just cut through the noise and extol the words of late economic anthropologist David Graeber and say that we as Americans are suffering from a critical case of bullshit jobs. Greg works at a convenience store called the Snack Falcon. Bea works at a hardware store called Old Pickaxe. Angus works at a video rental store called TOO2. Mae's dad, Stan, works in the meat section at a food market called Ham Panther after a long stint of other, more service industries-oriented jobs. These are all service industry jobs. Every character hates their job. Well, Greg doesn't so much hate his job as much as he acts like he doesn't even have it. As I mentioned before, Night in the Woods is very concerned, despite its cute paper cutout looking with animals aesthetic, in evoking a feeling of realism. And there are few things more real in this life than saying that your job sucks. But nevertheless, Bea continues because her surviving father depends on her. Greg and Angus continue because they both want to move out of Possum Springs, and Stan Borowski continues because his job gives health benefits. Stan in particular notes that the unions at Ham Panther are weak, his work is not respected or rewarded, and that he deserves more in the way of a living wage. But nevertheless, I think a lot of people feel the way Stan does. I think everybody deserves to have their work respected and rewarded with a living wage. But there's no choice in America to vote for labor, so I can't stop thinking about Night in the Woods. I remember someone who I was once close with recommending I play it because it seems like something I would like. If I could tell them that they were utterly correct in a way that would be understood, I would. It's as implacable in my mind as Persona 4 was when I finally finished that game, but in an entirely different direction. It's as profoundly American as Persona 4 is a ruminative reflection on a high school experience that almost none of its players actually had. Americana used to be cowboys, excess, Gilded Ages, and tech booms, Norman Rockwell and J.C. Leyendecker. Now Americana has shrunk into a puddle, like America's reputation. Americana is now Night in the Woods, a game so honest about its setting that it puts some cute animals on the face of it to cover the tears. A worldview so cynical that it imagines a cult of specifically American conservatism so callous that it kills whatever social undesirables it sees fit so it can appeal to an invisible cosmic/spiritual force that'll keep things from changing. And a view of people so warm that it treats even the mess of a person that Mae Borowski is with gentleness and compassion rather than condemnation. The softness of sharing a pizza and a song in the dark times. To me, I can't help but think of that song as a song that I am similarly always thinking about, Brave Faces, Everyone by Spanish Love Songs and its final lyrics. When it all burns down, will you carry me over? We don't have to fix everything at once. We were never broken. Life's just very long.
Brave faces, everyone.
Part 3, Night in the Woods is off the cuff word vomit. This is Part 3 Delita coming from the future of the other Part 3 Delita who you're going to be seeing shortly, and you know it's a different time because I have a little thing going on in my face that I no longer have going on in my face. Real ones will comment telling me if it is better or worse now versus then. Anyway, the only thing I wanted to share, because I'm going to let I'm going to let past me do the talking in the future of a couple minutes from now, but I had one more thing I wanted to share. First thing is first. I said in this video that Greg's storyline, Greg's whole arc, all the hangouts with him have a touch of gravitas. I was wrong. There's a lot, because like everything in this game, it's so much better than it appears to be, than it has any right to be. And Greg's story, like everything else in this game, it's amazing. I would still say that B's version of Night in the Woods, like where you hang out with B more, is the overall more emotionally satisfying and complete feeling version of the game, but Greg's is similarly very satisfying, very good, top quality, above the top shelf shit. And my last note before I let past me with the goatee take over is that I lied to you. They lied to you in the future. They say they had completed the game for two complete runs of the game. That is a lie. I was about 85, maybe 90% of the way through, and I stopped at the moment that I recorded that video, precisely the moment before I went to the top of the hill with Angus. And when I tell you, tears were emerging from my eyes like waterfalls. It is an amazing moment. I have nothing more to really say about it. If you haven't experienced it, experience it. I'm not going to say anything about it except, oh my God, the writing in this game is above anything else in video games. Just writing alone, best in class. Anyway, throwing it to past me in the future of like 2 seconds from now. Bye. Hello everyone, greetings from the editing version of Deleta UB41. This is coming off the cuff. How are you all doing? Thank you for staying around until the end, even including the postscript. That's incredible. If you are here, you have the brain of a philosopher and the heart of a poet, and I admire that about you. Alright, let's lift up this gossamer thin curtain. Full disclosure, I have played Night in the Woods 2 times, and I have split this essay into 2 parts. I'm not telling you anything you probably don't already know. I clearly delineate parts 1 and 2 of this video essay, but the first part actually came maybe about 2 months ago. I wrote it in just one shot over the weekend, didn't really think about it, and I had actually not even played the game for my second time for that playthrough. The first one, Night in the Woods is a Pizza and a Song, was written over a year ago after my first playthrough of the game. So my third mini essay, which you are receiving right now, and no, I do not really count this as a meaningful part of the video, comes after 2 playthroughs of the game, 2 completed playthroughs of the game, and I'm going to say I'm actually more impressed by it than I thought I was. If you thought this review was glowing, it's gotten more extreme since upon all of my writing for this, I think I would have listed Night in the Woods in my top 25 games of all time. I think I've upped that a bit. It's probably bumping into the top 15 now. This game is incredible. Something I sort of quickly gloss over in the video proper is the richness of the side content. The richness of the side content in this game, I'm keeping that in. The richness of the side content in this game is incredible. I really most discovered that on the most recent playthrough. You can keep digging through this game and find stuff. It's actually pretty amazing. If you're just diligent about going through Possum Springs, combing through the honestly pretty small overworld, the pretty small actual game space, you'll find just an incredible bevy of secrets, and not all of them are actually particularly plot meaningful, but all of them are cool in one way or another, and the most important thing is that all of them give you a journal entry. Can you believe I mentioned this journal in passing? Just like comes up one time in the video proper, one time. The journal is game design genius because it's an achievement system with like a much more physically palpable reward system than just point go up. You get to see the actual entries into May's journal. It's great. And they are so engaged in like this journal as an actual integrated game system that little things have become like pieces of iconography within the Night in the Woods canon, like Roof Cat. Roof Cat is correct, I think is what it is. It's this extremely difficult platforming challenge where like you have to do a very hard series of jumps to get yourself onto the highest point in Possum Springs, and there's a cat there, and May's journal entry is just Roof Cat is correct. If you complete Demon Tower, you get a special Demon Tower journal entry. I've seen people with tattoos, or I've seen at least person with tattoos of the Demon Tower journal entry. This is the strength of the iconography of the game. And oh goodness, I'm feeling like I'm forgetting another third one that was really cool. Oh, there's also the flex of an achievement. If you score a good score on Pumpkinhead Guy, you get a special illustration of May doing well at Pumpkinhead Guy, which is again something I've never done. I'm probably never going to be able to do because again, Guitar Man is a better rhythm game than the Night in the Woods rhythm game. But you know what I will say? Night in the Woods rhythm game is better than Parappa the Rapper. Parappa the Rapper is so much worse than I think people are ready to admit, but different conversation for a different day. I'm not here to lose people, alright? It is this like magnificently, brilliantly ordered piece of game design that one playthrough of this game necessarily cannot give you all of the content available within it, and also that players on their first playthrough are just not liable to engage with all the side content in this game. So first of all, you play through the game your first time. You kind of not rush through it, but you go through it. You do your normal thing. Maybe you hang out with B on that route and you get your heart torn into pieces and you feel terrible about yourself. Very good, very fun, 5 out of 5 game experience. Then you're like, well, yeah, I did want to see what the deal with this Greg guy is. I didn't really hang out with him much, so you go back to the game, you hang out with Greg more, but then you take your time in the town, and then you find all this stuff that you had never found before. There was so much in the way of cutscenes and so much in the way of unseen locations and just stuff I'd never even engaged with or knew existed. I did not know Pastor K existed at all the first time I played this. When I wrote, again, the second part of the script, which is chronologically the first, I did not know Pastor K existed as a character, and I barely reference her in this video because I'm a hack, right? Because I am a hack. Pastor K is a good character. It really nails that sort of ambiguity of how the game treats its characters, because you look at Pastor K and you're like, well, damn it, she's an annoying religious nut, but she's a good person. Or at least she seems to, unless I completely missed something. Please don't tell me I missed something. Leave your comments out. I don't want to hear them. Actually, I'm sorry. I also completely misspoke. I called Pastor K a religious nut. She's actually shown to be a pretty skeptical character, despite literally being a pastor at a church. So, again, the richness, the texture, the verisimilitude, the believability of it all. I like it. And I'm jumping ahead of this one. Speaking of errors, this is not one. This is not an error, and I will not be accepting any pushback on this. Yes, Night in the Woods is somewhere central Pennsylvania. How do I know this? Well, how do you know? Okay, first of all, what's the deal with the pierogies? If you know, you know. Second thing, and this is my ace in the hole. Look, there's lots of aces in the hole, but this is the ace in the hole. Smelters. Come on. The game, they're in Smelters country. They're not in whatever the in-game equivalent of the Eagles is. They're not in Eagles country. They're in Smelters country. And if you don't know what the Smelters are, I'm sorry. Like, what are you... I don't even know anything about football, and I know what they're talking about. So, like, come on, dude. It's central to Western Pennsylvania. Maybe Northwest Virginia. But that's it. There's a rigorously sourced, highly cited, thoroughly annotated, peer-reviewed, and, just all around collegiate Reddit post that is documenting what one user in particular thinks is the analogous real-world location of Possum Springs. Hey, cat, where? Oh. She's jumping on stuff. Okay. I'm scared of my webcam position. I would show what she's doing if not for that. Anyway, yes. Very academic, very rigorous Reddit post. Gonna be popping that down there for your perusal, and just the eventual surrender to the correctness of my perspective, because some things are opinions and some things are just science. I made that joke in the video. This time it's also at least halfway a joke, but a little bit not too. Like, I'm sorry, Pluto isn't a planet, and we're not getting it back. Hey, Harvey. Hey. Hey. Who's a good little mammal? Yeah. I've said enough. Night in the Woods, good. If you haven't played it, play it. If you have played it, play it again. I gotta go pay attention to this one.